Good afternoon. I'm Paul Alivisatos. I'm a chemistry professor and the provost at the university. And this will be a panel where we talk about faculty at Berkeley and the experiences of faculty. I think everybody here is deeply tied to Berkeley. It's a rambunctious, energetic, kaleidoscopic place that shakes the world. We are blessed with amazing staff who support the university in every way with deep dedication. We all know the students are the most curious and questioning students we could possibly hope for, but the 1,500 ladder rank faculty play an incredibly special role in the university. And we really do have the most remarkable faculty. As the chancellor mentioned in her comments, we have the same number of faculty as we did more than a decade ago when we had 30% fewer students. So a key feature of this campaign will be around growth of the faculty. And so we thought it was terribly important for you to hear from our faculty about what ties them to Berkeley, what keeps them here, what are the ideas that animate them, how are they changing the world. So at the moment, we have 3 faculty with us. We're waiting for our 4th, who will no doubt show up momentarily. Here, just to my left, is Britt Glausinger, who's a professor in the Department of Plant and Microbial Biology and in the Department of Molecular and Cell Biology. I note with some happiness that she was also one of the members of our first Leadership Academy cohort at Berkeley last year. So I'm delighted to see you here, Britt. Iris Maus is the director of the Emotion and Emotion Regulation Lab and is a professor in the Department of Psychology. And Stuart Russell is a professor. He has served as chair, indeed, which means that he has lots of experience of this university, of electrical engineering and computer science. And he's also an adjunct professor of neurological surgery at UC San Francisco. Those are our 3 faculty who are here joining me at this panel today. And should he appear, we'll have Bob Tejan, who I'll introduce upon his arrival. Britt, maybe I can just start with you, and you could just tell us a little bit about what excites you about your research.
Yeah. First, thank you for having me here, and thanks to everyone for being here and listening and chatting with us. So I study viruses, and something that has excited me about them, actually, this is what captured me into science in general, so it's something I've been excited about my entire career, is trying to understand how these tiny organisms whose genomes are about 1 million times smaller than those of the hosts that they infect, like humans, can actually get into a cell and wreak havoc. And I find that a fascinating question. And I study this in a class of viruses that causes cancer in AIDS patients. And so that's been the driving force of my program.
Wonderful. Iris, maybe you can say a few words about your research area and what excites you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me. And I want to start by saying thank you for all the work that you do that helps sustain all our research and students. I study the role that emotions and emotion regulation play in helping people avoid disorder and gain happiness and health. A little bit more specifically, we look at what emotions people should have, how much of emotions they should have, and when they should have them to be healthy and happy. And one of the contexts that we're most intrigued by is to look at when health and well-being are most challenged, and that's when people experience stressful life events and adversity, things like loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of security, facing discrimination. And what those experiences share is that when they're severe or chronic, they can wreak havoc. They can have devastating effects on people's health and well-being. And what's really intriguing to us is that some people manage to, even in the face of very extreme adversity, they manage to avoid those negative effects. And some have referred to that as ordinary magic. So somehow some people are able to avoid those terrible, devastating effects on their mental and physical health. And in my lab, we look at how those people are able to achieve that ordinary magic and what role emotions and emotional regulation play in that.
Stuart.
Thank you, Paul. So I've been at Berkeley for 33 years and a bit, and I've loved every minute of it, including serving 3 years on the budget committee. And
has nothing to do with budget.
which has, as Paul says, has nothing to do with budget. It's the committee that looks at every faculty appointment and promotion. People from other universities describe it as our secret weapon. It's how we keep our faculty on their toes. It's how we ensure that faculty feel that their cases are fairly treated by their peers, not by favoritism, not by some administration path, but it's actually a faculty committee. So it's a wonderful thing. It's about 100 hours a week. But I got to look at the research of every single faculty member on the campus. And that was just awe-inspiring, humbling. I wonder how I ever got appointed in the first place. It really brings home the fact that the Berkeley faculty are dedicated to making the world a better place. So my own work is in artificial intelligence. Over the years, I've worked on everything from very theoretical projects like what does it mean to be rational when you can't compute, it's not feasible to compute the rational thing to do. So what we call bounded rationality. I've worked on machine learning, probabilistic reasoning. I've worked on applications, so one of them is intensive care medicine in the neurosurgery department at UCSF. I've also worked on the monitoring system for the nuclear test ban treaty. So there is Berkeley software running at the UN, keeping us all safe, theoretically, from nuclear explosions. And most recently, since both of you talked about wreaking havoc, I am going to say that not viruses and not emotions, but AI itself could wreak havoc on the world if it's not properly designed. And we're already seeing that, for example, with the content selection algorithms. They're simple machine learning algorithms on social media that are dislocating our democracy and our international alliances and everything else on the planet right now, because they're pursuing a fixed objective, namely click-through, right? The monetization of your online activity to the exclusion of everything else. And this is an old problem, right? That we don't know how to specify objectives correctly. If you have a genie offering you 3 wishes, what's the 3rd wish going to be, right? It's always, please undo the first 2 wishes because I ruined everything, right? Now, as AI systems become more and more powerful and more globally disseminated, they are going to be a genie. And if we ask them to do the wrong thing, we may not get a 2nd wish at all. And so my research right now is dedicated to rebuilding AI from the ground up on a different foundation that doesn't require us to specify the objective correctly, the AI system actually knows that it doesn't know what the objective is. And it turns out that this uncertainty couples the AI system to us forever and makes it controllable and deferential in ways that traditional AI systems would never be. So we call this provably beneficial AI, and there's a whole bunch of Greek letters and mathematical theorems, and now we're starting to move into demonstration systems and policy, trying to convince governments and corporations that they have to go this way over the long term.
Beautiful, thank you. Thank you for referencing your engagement with the budget committee, which has nothing to do with budget, but indeed does help us make sure that we have the best possible faculty. It is a wonderful example of what does set Berkeley apart, which is this very distributed. Every individual on the faculty feels the deep sense of responsibility to develop their area of knowledge, but to do it in a way that is sharing and to have shared governance in how the university itself is run. It's quite unusual. Other universities don't do it in quite the same way. And I do believe it's part of the core DNA of what makes it a truly wonderful and amazing place to be a part of. I thought what I could do next is ask you a little bit about a question that every Berkeley faculty member sooner or later does encounter, which is, should you stay at Berkeley? And why did you? And of course, the reason's obvious, because we've accumulated the most amazing faculty in the world, and people want to come and rate us all the time. The provost's office, I would say, I don't know what fraction of our time we spend on that issue, but it's a really big one. What's quite remarkable is how committed people are, how much they love to be here and why they want to stay. So I thought I would ask you as well, if you could talk a little bit about what ties you to Berkeley. Why do you feel like this is the place for you to be?
Yeah, I would say for me, there are maybe at least three things that tie me to Berkeley. And the first is something that, Paul, you just touched on, the idea of shared governance, which is also linked to shared responsibility. But what it means is that being a faculty member here, you have a key role in running the entire university. And if you have an idea for how something should be different or how something should be changed, then your voice will be heard, and there's a mechanism for that to be to happen. And so that's an enormously satisfying thing that gives us all buy-in to the university. It's not just somebody else directing what's going to happen, is that we collectively direct what happens here. And I think that really creates a sense of loyalty to the university. The other thing, which you also touched on, is that the intellectual capital here is spectacular. And it is very hard for me to envision that I could go almost anywhere else and achieve the things that I want to achieve here in a very interdisciplinary way. So I'm a believer that you can't fix things that you don't understand. And so fundamentally, what many of us do here is we get at understanding how things work, be they AI or the intricacies of our own cells or climate change or whatnot. And so through that basic understanding, which is the fundamentals of basic research that Berkeley excels at so much, then we can change the world with that knowledge. And here is a place where there are experts, world experts in all of these areas, all of whom are extremely collegial. I've never come across a situation where I have an idea and I want to go talk to somebody about it or find a collaborator. Nobody feels like, well, nope, that's my area of research. I'm carving that out for myself. Everybody is really interested in helping and engaging in that collaborative research. And so that's a real delight being here. And the third thing is that it doesn't matter how visionary your ideas are, you can't execute them if you don't have the absolute best people carrying those out and coming up with new ideas. And for us, those people are the graduate students. And this is something that the Chancellor mentioned, that Berkeley is number one for many reasons, but the wheels behind getting those discoveries made are the graduate students. And they're not just there doing the work that we come up with the ideas for. They're the source of much of the innovation that comes out of the labs that we do. And so I think they're often not seen by the public, but these are true drivers of the innovation here. And because we're known as, of course, the #1 public university in the world, that gives us a sense of everybody wants to come here. And so we get to draw on the very best of the graduate students and undergraduates that really the world, California certainly, and the world has to offer. And that it's very hard to underestimate how important that is in getting things done. And so those are really 3 key areas for me.
Thank you. Iris, would you like to take that question on? What ties you to Berkeley?
Sure. I also have 3 reasons. And I think the first set of reasons is what you commented on last, and that's really the students. The students are amazing. They're spectacular, and they're incredibly resilient. And I see sort of in the students almost every day what I study, that sort of ordinary magic, that they are brilliant and resilient, often in the face of quite a bit of burden in their lives. And I see students overcoming that daily. And that's true for undergraduate students and the graduate students. So I so often feel inspired by them. And that's one really big reason for me to stay here. And really, when I have been asked whether I would be movable, I don't even have to think about it. It's not even a question for me. That's probably not the smartest way to go about it, but it's true.
It's emotionally centered.
So the budget committee now knows that they don't take you seriously.
Not even a question about it. And really, the students are at the heart of that. And then the second piece is also human. And I think you also mentioned that, and that's colleagues and fellow faculty who are also incredibly inspiring. I found it so true what you said, that these are often world experts, and I'm awed by them. And at the same time, they're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And to me, that's unique, and I'm incredibly grateful for being able to do research in a place like that. And I gotta have a third reason, and that's I think the mission of UC Berkeley that I find also very inspiring, and I'm very glad that I get to be part of that. And the mission of being a public university that's intended to lift up and provide higher education to as many people as possible, and in particular students who have been disadvantaged, disenfranchised, and marginalized in other parts of their lives. And to me, that mission is really a third pillar of why I never even think about leaving. There's no competition to being able to be part of that mission. And if I could add just a little side note to that, and that's that the research that I think we're all encouraged to do is often theoretically groundbreaking, but also very much aimed at improving the world. And I see that as part of that mission to do good in the world through our teaching and through our research as well. So, yeah.
Well, everything Britt said and everything Iris said. So they basically took all my reasons for being here. Yeah, so it's an incredible intellectual community. Next semester, I'm teaching a course with 2 philosophers and an economist on, the practical and philosophical issues arising with trying to make AI beneficial for the human race. What does that mean? What is beneficial from a moral philosophy point of view? Feasibility of the mechanism design from an economic point of view. And it's the best philosophy department in the world. It's the best economics department right now, the number one equal ranked in the US. And as you say, that people are extremely generous with their time. Shakar Kariv, who just stepped down as chair of economics, already had a full teaching load, and I called him up and said, come and talk to my group. I think you are the right person to help us with this project. And he came and talked to my group, and I said, will you help us teach the course? And he said, well, my wife will kill me, but yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So that's marvelous. When you walk around the campus, so I should say I did my PhD at another place. And it's sort of interesting to just, as you walk around campus, overhear the conversations and what people are talking about. Are they talking about BMWs and A's versus A minuses, or are they talking about eigenvectors and Aristotle and some particular biological molecule that they're studying? And in Berkeley, it's always those latter things. The conversations you overhear are almost a sort of a caricature, right? You can't believe that these sort of sweatshirted, tattooed undergrads are talking about, they're fulfilling our wildest dreams about what undergraduates would be talking about when they're walking around campus. They really are. So I think you're unlikely to find those things elsewhere.
Yes. Well, I'm going to say a word about this too. I myself joined the faculty right around the same time as you, Stuart. So we're well into our, past 30 years of being on the faculty. And when I came, I was certainly drawn by the allure of a place that had always in science challenged the most foundational ideas and come up with some of the world-changing discoveries, but also the fact that it was a place that always challenged society to be more just. So I was just so excited to come here, and my work was in the area of, it still is, in the area of studying very tiny crystals. They might just be 5 or 10 atoms across. They're really tiny. They do things that are completely different than ordinary materials. And when I started with my coworkers and all my colleagues who were helping me the whole time, there weren't other research groups doing that kind of work. And so when I first started, of course, it's natural enough to be feeling some anxiety to get some continued research funding. So I would apply for my research grants like people normally do. And there was no one else doing that kind of work at any other place. So no one really could read my proposals and judge them quite very well. So one of the most fascinating experiences for me that tied me forever to Berkeley was actually my colleagues were reading the work that we were starting to publish. They were following it. They could see, hey, this is going to turn out to be significant. This is going to turn out to be important. So in fact, they decided to give me tenure, to promote me early, actually a few months before I got my first research grant, because they read the work. There was someone on that darn budget committee, I don't know who it was, who read it and said, hey, yeah, this is a new idea. They weren't trying to count other things. They were really driven by that passion of what's new, what's the new idea, and to support it. And so the faculty came from the beginning, welcomed in, and it's not like some other universities where they'll hire people after the fact when all the risk has been squeezed out. Here, people come and we make them, we help them to be successful, and they are. And that's what's so special about our faculty. I think that's part of what ties us to the place, is that it's an environment that's like that. Now, there are other features. I think you've touched upon them, the collegiality, the interdisciplinarity of it, the fact that it's a compact campus, so you can kind of, interact with people. These are all amazing things that make our faculty so special. I'd like to now switch our conversation to a kind of more future-looking discussion, if I may. The Chancellor talked about the aspirations of our university. We're launching now with you as our friends on this campaign, and the campaign will really create the resource base for Berkeley to be quite extraordinary in 10 and in 20 years. The actions that we take collectively will set a course that will affect the future of this place over a long period of time, and it will change many lives. And you're each involved in a really important area of research and in teaching and in just all the aspects of the academic life of your disciplines. And so I'd like to ask you what you think. How will Berkeley have an impact on the state, the nation, the world? How do you think Berkeley is going to change things, and how do you see that unfolding in the coming period of time? I know that's a heavy question, but it's at some level that's what this campaign is all about. What is the vision of our faculty around that? So I'm going to ask you that really hard question.
You can start in the other order. I know. I don't know if you're asking about particular innovations or you're talking about more generally, and so maybe I'll start general. And one of the things that I think about is how important it is for people often look at people in academics as you're sort of in your ivory tower and you're making fundamentally important discoveries. They have a confidence in that, but often scientists at least are not particularly good about sharing those discoveries in a way that the rest of the lay public can appreciate. And so how could we expect people to get enthusiastic about what we do if we don't spend the time to figure out how to communicate those things? And so I think that this is an area where Berkeley is going to be really key in the future. We are, of course, going to make amazing discoveries, and that's pretty obvious with things like CRISPR biology and climate change and how we're going to be able to influence those things. But then in going out and convincing the general public of why this is important and how they should change in order to themselves help change the world is something that Berkeley is very good at. And that's in part tied to the activism that is part of the Berkeley culture and the students and trainees who come here from all over the world expecting that everybody is looking at us to see where we should go. And so how can we better communicate that? And that's something that I myself am very passionate about is the art of communicating to the general public, particularly in the context of science, and work very actively with graduate students to train them how to do that, because we really need to be, as a public-facing university, we need to be the ones that are getting that message out to the rest of California and to the nation and to the world. And I think and fully expect that we're going to be leaders in that area. So I'll leave that as my first short answer, and then let you all fill in with other things.
Yeah, that's a really tough question. And I think in part I want to just echo what Britt said. It seems like there's sort of, we're in uncharted, sometimes I guess every time perhaps feels like that we're in uncharted territory, but maybe it feels more so now than before, and it seems like it takes a special place and excellence on all those levels to address the challenges that we're facing socially in this country in particular, challenges of climate change, and so forth. And so I think I really, this is not a cop-out, but I really resonate to what you said really resonated, that it seems especially important to for the university to continue to engage in the larger world and not to retreat. I read recently that the level of mistrust and distrust in higher education and research universities is at an all-time high. And that seems to be particularly ill-timed given the challenges that we're facing. And so it seems especially important to have a public university that's part and parcel of the fabric of the society, and that continues to lean in and continues to engage in conversation and make the points that we absolutely need this place to be able to face the challenges that we're facing. And communication, I think, is a really big part. That's what the key word that resonated with me. It seems like a really big part of that, and communicating our mission. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Berkeley has a long tradition of people being willing to stand up and say what they believe in, and we have to do that in spades going forward. So I'll just tell a little story. A couple of months ago, I was invited to a National Academies workshop. Actually, it was at the other place. And it was about the management, the governance of research on solar radiation management. So solar radiation management means changing the reflective index of the Earth's atmosphere so that we can modulate the temperature, basically a cooling system for the Earth. And a human-controlled cooling system. And some experiments have been done that it looks like it's quite feasible, very effective. The climate scientists were absolutely unanimous that we must not do additional research or develop this system. Because if we do, the argument that we have pretty much lost already with the fossil fuel industry will be completely lost. We will not be able to prevent the production of vast quantities of carbon dioxide, and we'll end up pushing the Earth beyond even the capacity of a solar radiation management system to control. So that tells you that this is not a problem that a scientist can solve. The scientist can do experiments and design methods and understand the physics of the system, but it's a much bigger problem than that. And in fact, almost all of our problems are much bigger problems than that, right? So we thought, the computer scientists thought the internet was a great thing, right? It would make information freely available to everybody, and we didn't anticipate the massive failure mode that we've seen with social media. And again, it's not a problem that a scientist can solve. It's also not a problem that a politician can solve or an economist can solve. It's got to be a joint effort of the kind that a campus like Berkeley can make. So if I think of where we can have our biggest impact, it's in solving the problems that the world does not know how to solve. Because we have such enormous reserves of talent. And also, I think, open-minded talent, people who don't want to just stay in their lab. They're in their lab because they want to make the world a better place, not because they want to win a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, no, thank you. Indeed, I think that what you describe is a faculty at Berkeley that has really incredible strength across so many disciplines. And we talked earlier about how important it is for Berkeley to retain its capacity in the STEM areas, particularly the infrastructural challenges that we face there. But what you're all alluding to, I think, is the fact that what does set Berkeley apart as a truly great university is the phenomenal breadth, the fact that the humanities, the social sciences, the professional schools, the STEM disciplines all together are really of such great excellence, and that we enjoy working together across those boundaries does create a very special environment that is quite distinctive. And although it may at first appear this is not an entirely random selection of faculty that sits up here at this here, because really when we're talking about what is going to be unfolding in the campaign, we're talking about, for example, the future of human health. And what we have learned over really a very long period of time is just how profoundly important Berkeley has been in that, whether it's the discoveries that underlie immunotherapy or the basic science discoveries that led to gene editing. Very fundamental biology has led the way for the discoveries that have changed human health and will again in the future. And this is, as the Chancellor mentioned earlier, a period where we have profound changes in our understanding of how human intelligence in all of its manifestations, emotional, but all manifestations, how that might arise. This will be a phenomenal period of discovery in that regard. The gift that we just received along with UCSF and the University of Washington from Sandy and Joan Weil is a marker in a sense about what the next decade will be like in our abilities to come to understand that vital area. And the areas of artificial intelligence that area is obviously undergoing just profound change. So we have right here exemplars of what the future of our world will be like and where the power of ideas is going to completely upend how we think about those in the future. So I'm actually very excited about the faculty that we have here, and I'm very excited also about seeing how we can work with you in the next several years to bring a new group of faculty to the campus that will help us grow the faculty and that will renew the promise of what we've got here. So I'd like to thank you all three for being a part of this, and I really appreciate all of your help.